Hi, I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips, and this is your weekly fishing report.
Up here in Mustang Lake, out here ICW, all this area up in here. Back lake here at Mustang, this back shoreline, this side shoreline here, all the way through that. Get out of your boat, get up in here. We've had our tides that kind of fluctuated this last week, up and down pretty good. You know, we lower in the morning, starts to come back in the afternoons. One of the things that you can do when you do your game plan for your day, you know, you're checking your weather and your barometric pressure and everything that goes along with that on these tides. If you're able to fish these on a little bit higher tide, then wait later in the day to get that too. Another thing that comes into your favor too is the temperatures begin to rise a little bit, especially with the sunshine that's been on here as well. So you get a kind of a twofold thing that goes in your favor. Your warmer water, a little bit more water that's in here because this thing back in here there's a bunch of shale that's back off in front of these back lake mouths. You've got scattered mud. You got really good mud that's back here further back toward the little creek that dumps all the way back into San Antonio Bay, which with certain levels of water, you know, it's got water either in it or out of it. It's just water levels and how it fluctuates. But this whole thing back in here, walk this back shoreline. There's been a decent amount of bait. And again, this time of year, wintertime, colder months, our bait migrates out of here. So there's still mullet that's still in here. You still got pin perch that are around, little small crustaceans and shrimp that are still in the system as well. It's all going to be part of your bait, some of which you will see and some of it which you will not see. But if you see just a little bit of bait flipping, mullet flipping here or there, then that's considered a lot of bait this time of year, depending on what our water temps are, which have been hovering around mid-50s here for the last week or so. Over this mud, they're the areas that you really want to target. The grass that's in there, the scattered shell that's in there. Again, this is pretty soft. This back in this area, it's very manageable. You just have to take your time with it and not try to, get through it too fast. Anyway, this time of year, you want to be fishing slow and low and real methodical as it is anyway. So you take your time working these areas. You'll find your fish that are working back in here. The down south, the bigger baits, because we've transitioned toward a new moon. So the supermodel in the down south, magic grass, chicken of the sea, purple rain, have been pretty good for me so far into these areas as we transition into these days toward the new moon. The corkies, the original and the floater have been good. I'm throwing the original more than I'm throwing any of that. And then, of course, your soft dine, double D's have all been productive baits in these types of areas. As you get out here and work back around, you can get on the ICW side down these shorelines here. You can get probably a little past where the Texas Parks and Wildlife little cut through is back there and get on the other side of this flat. It's a real long flat, probably 300-400 yards. It's very wadeable, close to the riprap there. Park your boat up there. Just make sure you got it really good and stuck to the bottom. You may want to throw a secondary anchor out because of the barge traffic. It will suck that water out of there. So if you're not ready for that, it might bust your boat loose. So make sure you take care of that. But work these areas up here. So you've got deep water access. You've got that nice mud that's there. These fish will come up out of that little bit deeper water, especially if you got some bait that's working up here on the shoreline. Work all this area here with those baits that I mentioned earlier. Remember to incorporate a major or minor into your fishing day up into these areas here. Be patient with that because sometimes these majors and minors don't produce a bunch. So you just have to kind of grind through these sometimes, and sometimes that you'll get a great bite that comes out of it. But continue to work these areas with your different baits, darker baits, depending on what your water clarity is. Locate a little bit of bait working and you'll find your fish. Over here in Carlos, the fingers all the way down to the cut through, back around to this edge here, over to the cedar dugout, all this area here, this big flat here. Get inside that shell bar there. You've got some decent mud that's back in there that's got some shell that's mixed into it. I've come across, a black drum or two ever so often, but there's some redfish that are cruising in and out of this area up in here. The mirror lure, Little John, has been pretty good in a couple of different flavors, strawberry or watermelon red. Your darker is called a purple demon, I think, is real deep purple on that. So those two colors right there have been pretty productive up here in this area. If that's what you're primarily trying to find is black drum, they will eat that. And I've said that in the past before, is throw that mirror lure, Little John, you can catch some pretty good black drum on that from time to time, as well as your redfish and your trout. That said, keep working back around here in your fingers, work the guts all through this, depending on what your wind is, depending on what's going on with that. Make sure you pay attention to your weather reports, because you don't want to be caught out here in these fingers and a big old front comes blowing through here because there's nowhere to hide. Plus, on top of that, it dirties up that water so fast and it becomes almost next to impossible to fish, just because it's just difficult with water clarity and how rough it can get. Work yourself across, Carlos. Get on the far shoreline over here on the point, over here by Dunham. And it's got the old ICW that used to go through here. You've got deeper water points. Get on the edge of that, especially with our water, fluctuating levels wise. So get here on the edge of this. You got a lot of scattered shale that's out there. Throw your corkies up in this. Throw your plastics up in here, your down south, or whatever plastic that you want. Like I say, we're transitioning toward this new moon, which here probably the next couple of days, that will be kicking in full tilt. And you'll be having some spectacular days as far as opportunities for that moonrise and that moon set that's coming up. All these areas in here, that deeper water, the shale, take your time with this. There's nice little mud flats that are off of these areas. Look for your bait working in these areas. You can even throw topwater. We've had some good success with some topwater baits from time to time. It's not as productive as it would be later in the spring or maybe summertime, but you can still locate some fish with that topwater bait when you get the right conditions. You can throw that bait up in there, work it up on the shorelines, work a little bit shallower waters. These redfish have been pushing up there pretty close to the shore. We're seeing some where you can see those tails sticking out of the water. They're sitting there looking. You throw that topwater across their nose like that, and they'll come alive and come after it. They may not necessarily commit to it, but then you can throw it in right there behind it with that with the plastic or the double D. The double D's been really good in crotch to knee deep water. All that kind of area back in here, you got a little star-shaped reef that's back in this area. Get up in the side of those mouths because you get a lot of good mud. We found some nice trout that have been hanging in these areas. Again, it's been on the down south supermodels, the burner shad, big old high pressure in place we had for a couple of days. That burner shad was doing really well. It was doing very productive thing. So remember that when you want to downsize those baits. But again, we got a new moon coming, so you can start throwing your bigger baits to start with if that's what you so choose, and then just kind of progress from there and see. The fish will dictate what they want. So if you're getting opportunities with that, stick with it and just maybe change your colors and continue to work these areas back in here, locate your bait. Be real methodical, be real slow, work these areas because they're not super aggressive bite. So hopefully here in the next couple of days when that moon's really kicking, that will turn that volume up as far as what the fish are eating and how often that they're eating. St. Charles Bay, off of Bird, up here on the top, around the East Pocket, all around here. These areas here, even with the water levels being what they have been pretty good. Now, if you're going to run your boat up in this area, be careful. There is a lot of shale that's back in there, so if that water's dropped out too much, you're not going to have very much success getting your boat back in there. All you're going to do is mess it up. It's pretty much airboat country for the most part when the tides are super low, but when those tides start coming back and you start getting a decent amount of water in there, it becomes a really good area to fish and wade. Got the right kind of structure, bottom, mud in here. There's been decent bait that's working there. There's been a few redfish that have flown in and out of that area. But that said, this whole shoreline, all the way down to here, coming all the way back around up to Egg Point, all around the Egg Point. So you keep on going all around that point there and work these areas here. One thing that kind of patternized was looking at leeward shorelines after we had a couple little fronts pushed through. There's some fish were hanging on that leeward side, which is the left wind side. Then you got the windward side where you got most of the wind that's pushing into it. So pay attention to those little bitty things like that whenever you start to fish a certain point. And then you'll go, the next time that you move and you get to those areas, then you'll know, okay, we found fish on this particular point. We need to fish the same style of point on the next location that we get. Cavasso Creek, all up and down that side where the mouth, where those little back lake mouths drop out. Throwing plastics in there, you're down south. Both the burner shad and the regular size supermodels all have been good back in there. Your darker versions, the chicken of the sea, magic grass, a few of the purple rain has been good back in there. Any of your darker colors in that, and even if you don't throw down south, get something that's darker. If you have a flavor that you like or a brand that you like, throw that. The marker 54, both the mullet run and the jerk shrimp have been pretty good here. Free lining that shrimp, just kind of bouncing it off the bottom. And then, of course, the mullet run, just swimming it. The redfish have been cruising up and down these shorelines, been in some of these areas, have had a few more than others. But throwing that mullet run that's in there, put your right jig head that's on it, 16th, 1/8 ounce, whatever you like, and just swim those baits in that knee to thigh deep water. We've had pretty good success with that. That said, around Boy Scout camp, you know that you've got that whole little slough that runs back down in there to that little back lake. All that area back in there has got great mud. It's got good structure. You've got grass up and down that shoreline. And you got great opportunities from a lot of different ways, just to pay attention to what your wind is doing, find what your bait's doing, see where it's working. Birds have been two of the main ways that we have found what our bait, because when that bait's not flickering a whole lot, you want to look for your birds. Ospreys and your brown pelicans have been great indicators where your bait line is, and so you just kind of get on that and start working your baits up and down that, and you'll start locating your fish. Again, work your better baits or your bigger baits. Since we've got a new moon that's coming, there's going to be a 10-day increment that's going to be really good for you to fish these time frames. The majors and minors will be your main points of emphasis, especially this time of year, since it's a little bit slower. So again, work these areas, be patient with these areas, and you'll locate your fish.
Thanks for watching. I'm Captain Larry Bell.